Good afternoon. We are now starting the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee meeting for Wednesday, March 4th. Madam Clerk, please call roll.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderman Devotie.
Present.
Alderwoman Cox Antwi.
Present.
Chair Browning.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. 4 present. We have quorum.
Thank you. And with that, we will move on to approval of the minutes. I will accept a motion to approve the minutes from Wednesday, February 25th, 2026.
So moved.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 1st, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th. Madam Clerk?
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Vice Chair Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderman Devotie. Alderwoman Cox Antwi.
Aye.
Chair Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. 4 aye votes.
Thank you. With that, the minutes are approved. We do not have any board bills for review today. We do not have any resolutions for review. We do have one item under committee discussions, and that will be a presentation from our water division. Director Battelle, you are recognized when you are ready.
Good afternoon. Chair Browning, members of the committee, thank you for having me here today. We were here obviously in January providing a very critical update about our financial position at the Water Division. It's been a few months. We do have another presentation for you, just another update, status, and then also to talk through some of the recent ongoing activities at the Water Division. So I wanted to start, first of all, by kind of thanking my team. We've been working very hard. They're very dedicated. I highlight some names here: Spencer Gould, our Special Assistant to the Water Commissioner; Thomas Correll, our Information System Support Manager, who helps with a lot of the data improvements and processes that we're doing; Perla Burke, our Fiscal Manager, who keeps track of the financing and funding. Certainly lets us know when there are challenges coming up, how the cash balances are flowing. And Robert Atchison, our new PIO, who has fired up many socials, has our website looking good, is trying to communicate and message all the work that we're doing through multiple channels. So, all right, so as I typically do, I want to start off with our mission: safe, reliable, economical drinking water for all who live, work, and play in St. Louis. We've also been working a little bit to develop our vision statement. Responsibly serving our residents, and that is, something we take seriously, responsibility that we have to provide the service that we do, but also looking at our systems, continuously evaluating and improving our systems, the service we provide, looking ahead to the future. And then also, to be transparent, having that voice, messaging out to the public what it is that we're doing, improvements that we're making, challenges that we're seeing at the utility, to be good stewards of the ratepayer dollars that come into our enterprise, the public utility that we are at the Water Division, to provide quality city services. And so, that vision statement is starting to come together, but it really does set the table for what we are trying to do into the next decade, 20 years, 30 years at the Water Division to continue serving for generations to come. So I wanted to outline the presentation that I have for you today. An update on the ongoing infrastructure challenges that we're facing. Obviously we had a pretty significant winter storm. There were some impacts to the city and the service that we provide there. An update on our financial position. An update on what we're doing to outreach, to the community, message to the community, the important work that's going on, but also the needs that continue to challenge us every day, and next steps. So I mentioned the infrastructure challenges. It was quite a stress test on the water system. We have 1,300 miles of water main. We had one of the highest number of water main breaks in recent years last year. We continue to see the effects of this aging infrastructure, and those effects are getting worse as years go by. This map here shows some of the recent main replacement projects that we've identified, but also some of the recent main repair work activities we have in the city. You can see those colored dots on the map. They just dot the entire city geography. You see some of these images, the impacts through the winter storm, and there were quite a few main breaks that occurred in that winter storm that really did stress and strain our staffing and resources, caused us to have to kick up emergency contractors to assist, and then had a financial impact as well. All right, so we did make the news quite a bit through that storm event because of the high number of water main breaks that we had. It was in some ways enlightening for some residents who may not be aware, who haven't been impacted, but I think at this point, lots of our residents are impacted by these water main breaks. They go to the faucet, they turn it on, there's no water there. They reach out to their friends and neighbors on the block and find out. They go to our website, find out that there is an outage due to that main break. And then, of course, the news does cover these effects and impacts, what it's doing to the city residents, businesses, et cetera. So I mentioned the high number that we had. So far in 2026, unfortunately, I have to report we've had 155 main repair work orders already. Last year we did have 399. So we are trending in a bad direction right now. 120 of those occurred during the 3 weeks following the storm. So it was a very tight window, a high peak of main repair work activity that we had going on. We had to increase pumping at our treatment plants. In the winter, that doesn't tend to happen because consumption is typically down, but we had a lot of water loss going on. So we had to keep the system pressurized through that. We did have 1,336 service requests for water issues this year. Those are CSB requests, customer service calls, dispatch calls. Our average response time on those service requests was a little under 8 hours. That's from the request coming in to us identifying what the next steps may have to be. And then so far this year, we've had over 13,000 calls come into our customer service and dispatch. I do want to point out that less than 1% of those calls were transferred. So we are typically triaging and handling those as that request comes in, creating a next step, a plan to address these concerns. This is a little bit of a busy chart here, but it just kind of shows the peak in the storm impact that we have. What you see here is a look from the beginning of the year till just yesterday. The red line there is service requests that came in. You can see that I've highlighted a section in blue there. That is the storm response uptick, that tight window of 2 weeks where we had a very high number of calls coming in, a very high number of water main breaks. And you can see there just before that, actually, Executive Order 94, the mayor declared a state of emergency due to the winter storm coming that did drop nearly a foot of snow on the area in the city. I've also put a yellow line there that shows the temperature, the low temperature. As these main break activities came out, as the snow dropped, the temperatures dropped as well. We got into negative, degree Fahrenheit lows. Our crews worked through that because of the state of emergency. There was no choice. We had to repair these water main breaks. We had to restore water service to, provide that city service, but also minimize the impact and loss of water in the city so we can maintain pressure in the system. That highlighted area too, we did have 100 work orders. I mentioned in the 3 week time frame, we had 120. This is just a 2 week look. Close to 700 service requests. Our peak call volume day, we had almost 600 calls, 599 calls that. So I mentioned the storm response. We did participate actively in the Winter Weather Unified Command calls that City Emergency Management Agency stood up in the EOC. Sometimes it was virtual, sometimes it was in person, but we were tracking the impacts across the city with all city departments, close coordination with SEMA, with the mayor's office, with first responders, in police and fire, and all city departments that were working together collaboratively to ensure that there were no impacts that weren't being considered, weren't being responded to when collaboration needed to happen between departments. It was happening seamlessly and quickly. We did have our crews working 12 to 16-hour shifts around the clock, and we had emergency contractors called in to address this. But even still, it was unsustainable. Our response time was slowed with that peak of main repair work activities that we had. I do want to highlight our crews. They were phenomenal. The response that we provided, restoring water, oftentimes in less than 8 hours for these breaks, as they were being called into our dispatch, our customer service, through CSB, getting crews out there. Obviously, we had all of our crews on deck. They were working extended hours. We had our contractors as well. So we tried early on to address these as quick as we could, and then we did start falling behind a little bit. But I want to commend the activities, of our water division staff. They are hardworking, dedicated individuals that keep water flowing in the city of St. Louis and keep water in the pipes. So our emergency repairs did have a financial impact. This chart only tracks our payroll for a handful of pay periods through the event that I'm discussing here. You can see that typically we're a little over $100,000 in overtime on average. And during that peak of that emergency response, we're nearing $350,000 in overtime expenses. That is just a portion of the costs. This does not include restoration costs, contractor costs, material costs, equipment wear and tear. But as you can imagine, those effects were felt in those spaces too. So the funds that are needed to continue operation and response are critical when we have these kinds of emergency events to continue providing that city service that we do. So that takes us into our current financial position. Last time I was here, I highlighted that we projected a negative balance of approximately $8 million at the end of the fiscal year. Unfortunately, the projections are now a little bit worse, though historically there are some billing cycle related issues that happen in January that do cause a little bit of a dip in revenues. We are doing multiple things to make sure that we're watching this closely, making sure that we're making smart decisions with the money that we do have to continue operating. This doesn't include the ARPA reallocation bills. I want to thank you, Alderman Schweitzer, and the rest of the members of the committee that worked so hard to take those bills up in the committees that you did and take a hard look to see what money could be coming to the water division that was at risk of not being spent elsewhere in the ARPA space. So Board Bills 160 and 161. I do have an update here. I think I've not put that in this slide, but it did come out of HUD's committee, and so it seems like we are moving in the right direction to get both of those bills advanced, to get that funding to the water division. So we're hopeful that it will still allow us to complete 3 of these projects that we have identified to start with. These are main repair projects that have caused us to have high costs in emergency main repairs. Instead of just doing the repairs, we're going to be proactive to replace sections of main. That'll be a little bit more of a long-term solution. We'll reduce the emergency costs at those locations with the main breaks associated with those pipe segments. So I talked about some of the things that we're doing to ensure that we can continue watching the cash closely, continue to operate. Revenue collections is one of the big things that we're doing. The moratorium on water shutoffs was lifted by the mayor back in summer. We notified our delinquent customers who had a balance that was delinquent on their accounts. We started going out there and notifying properties that were at risk of being shut off with tags. We started shutting water off, across the city with the staffing that we do have, which is a little bit strained due to vacancies, but we're continuing to ramp into that program, build that capacity out. We are issuing a final service disconnection notice letter to all of the residents that are still behind. Our goal is to normalize our collections, to improve our cash flow, to be able to operate, moving forward here. So It is not to terminate accounts. We want people to contact us. We do have a utility assistance program that still has plenty of funding available. We've expanded the eligibility criteria for that ARPA-funded program. We encourage residents who are having trouble paying their water bills in the city to contact us to see if they're eligible to get that one-time payment of up to $500 and get into a repayment plan to get back on track. I've got a few QR codes that are on that letter. One of them is to pay your bill online, and one of them is to directly apply for that program. And so this will go out to thousands of customers who are having trouble with their accounts with delinquent balances to give them options to get back on track and contact us. Brief update on the rate sufficiency study. We are nearing completion in that study. That study aims to seek to provide clarity on 5 years of past data for revenues and expenses, make projections through a financial model. We do anticipate we'll have some clarity on that in the middle of March here, so just around the corner. We are attending public outreach meetings, wherever we're presented with opportunities to explain, some of the things that we're doing, discuss, the impacts that may land on customers' bills, and talk about feedback. From here, I'm actually going to pass it over to my special assistant, Spencer Gould. He's been doing a lot of this outreach in the community, reaching out to people who have forums for us to discuss water-related issues with them.
Thank you. So as Neeraj discussed, I'm going to go a little
I'm
bit.
sorry, sir. Could you introduce yourself to the public and your title, please?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Spencer Gould. I'm the Special Assistant to the Water Commissioner, City of St. Louis Water Division. Worried about that falling. As Neeraj mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about the outreach that we're doing. So he mentioned in our vision about stewardship. And stewardship is something that we truly believe in. And a big part of that is not only providing safe, reliable, economical water, but also engaging with the public so that they know what we're doing. It's some feedback that we've gotten. We've taken that feedback and we've implemented it. We've been pushing very hard to improve what we've done in this field. And I'm going to go in detail a little bit about what we're doing. So first things, just as Neeraj mentioned, talking about the work that we're doing. So we're expanding our opportunities for the public. We're pushing very hard for advance notice so that these meetings are meaningful. If we're there by ourselves, it doesn't help people. People need to know about them. People need to be there. And so we're pushing and we're utilizing our PIO to not only make a better effort of being in the community, but letting people know that we're going to be there. And we'll cover these topics anywhere. I put up, hey, invite us, but everything from legislative meetings to neighborhood meetings to community events. If you've got a knitting group, I'll come out and talk about the stuff we're doing in water because it's important to me. I also put up the PIO email on there. If you want to reach out to us directly, if you've got an event, if you've got something with a group of people who are interested in this topic, let us know and we'll make every effort we can to be there. I talked a little bit about proactive messaging. This is us, doing the things that I'm saying. This is us going in the field, talking to newscasters, talking to reporters, informing the public about our work. We're beyond just responding to queries and questions. We're pushing. We're actively seeking and fulfilling opportunities to get this information out. So on that same line, just let us know and/or keep an eye out, and we'll let you know. We're building out our social media, our push there, again, for being accessible, engaged, timely, educational, informative, and invitational. We want people to know about us. We want to be transparent and open about the actions that we're doing, educating the public about our challenges. And so a big push to that is social media. It's not something that we had more than 4 or 5 months ago in a significant form, and we've dedicated that. We've built out these websites. We're building programs. This is something we care about, and we're pushing to do. So follow us. Go to these things. There's information there, information about what we're talking about here for rate review, but also about outages, also about the work that we're doing in the community. And so if you want to know more about this topic, go to these places and follow us, and we'll be able to provide information. Accessibility and transparency, as I mentioned, is important. On every single water bill that we've sent out, we have this note. Learn about our upcoming rate change proposal. Visit stlwater.com. So we're doing it there. There's a link there to our Facebook page showing the invitation for this event that went out on February 28th. We were trying to notify the public to be here, that we will be here, and to provide comments. There's also the recording of this meeting. So when this goes up, we'll put that on our website and it'll be available. Public comments will be accepted at any meeting. Our meeting materials will be available for everyone. Those event dates and times will be posted, and we will make every option we can for virtual accessibility as it exists and any ADA accessibility things we need to do. There's also a link there to send questions directly. So if you are in the public or on the board, you can reach out to us, ratereview@stlwater.com. That email will come to us. We will document that question. We will treat that as public comment, respond to it, and then put that on our website for information. And then talking about the website, this is our rate review website. So we built this out specifically for this process. It is a single hub for all of our information. It has our background information. It has the documentation that we have for these meetings. It will have documentation for future meetings going forward, financial information, reports, anything that you need that helps build or helps understand this, and then we use to build this case will be available to the public there. So there's another QR code there to scan if you want to access it. And then I'm going to pass it back to, one last slide here. This is our engagement timeline. So sharing what actions that we've taken and showing folks kind of where we are along in this process. So there are steps we've already taken. There are things that we're doing right now. And then there's a plan for looking forward in the future. We've sent notice, as I mentioned, it's on those bills. We had this first public meeting here on January 14th, which we appreciate the Public Infrastructure and Utility Board having us. And then what we're doing right now in March is hopefully late March posting that rate sufficiency study with a draft rate, as Neeraj mentioned. We have this meeting right now, and then we'll be hopefully sending meetings for public outreach meetings, sending notice of public outreach meetings going forward. And then the next steps in that process are listed there for you guys to be aware of what we're doing. And then I'm going to pass it on back to Director Patel to talk about.
All right, thank you, Spencer. So this is a little bit different timeline here. We are working on a rate review process right now, identifying the steps that are necessary within a rate review process. We're trying to follow that process right now, but moving forward, having something that is documented, a procedure that we will follow, requirements that we will have that provide for that notice, that provide for that engagement, that information sharing, that provides time for reaction to these things. So, we do have a step 5 that we are here. We're a little bit ahead of it, but the draft rate review proposal is something that, is just around the corner. Alderman Devotie, I know you asked last time about us coming and presenting that. We would like to do that. That I think is an appropriate next step. The recommendations within that proposal, to give that information to the public and also hear reaction and comment from that. All right, so this is a little bit exciting for us to talk about, but it is a little sneak peek into the water master plan. It's a little difficult to see. We zoomed in on some of this so that maybe you can see it a little bit better, but this is a look into the water main risk assessment we're doing. One of the things that we're working on is identifying projects that are critical, projects that will give us the most benefit for our money, return on our investment. And so the color grades that you see on that map for the risk failure scores go from highest, 60 and over, that are in red. And as you can see, there's some of that on that map. That grades down into that orange and yellow and green colors. And then, some of the gray that you see there is blending into the background, but that's a very low risk score pipe. It has not had a break, in the data set that we analyzed with the consultant that's doing this master plan for us. And that data set does go back to about 2016, 2017, so it's not comprehensive, but it is comprehensive enough. It has a very high coefficient of determination that shows that this data set is strongly correlative to build a pipe break model. That model is what drives this visual here in the map. So we've identified that over 90% of the pipe segments, are not problematic for us. They have a very low risk score, but that does leave 10% of pipes that should be looked at and evaluated for projects to do water main replacements instead of water main repair. That risk score over 30 is the focus right now for project identification. And again, as you can see, there's weights on these lines too for larger diameter mains that have a higher consequence of failure. But it is a pretty comprehensive formula that informs the next steps, building out the project list. And this is kind of an interim product right now, but we are working to develop that full outcome of that water master plan in the water main assessment and project development into a CIP. So these two maps you're looking at here are a little bit shorter term. We call them buckets 1 and 2, whereas bucket 3 is a long-term bucket. On the left there, you see completed projects. We're not new to replacing water main. We just don't do quite a bit of it. It's as funding is available, but we do have 2 ARPA projects that are completed, East Grand Avenue and Hall Street, Clayton and Big Bend Road. One of them was a 60-inch water main that was leaking that we replaced, a few pipe segments of in a very busy intersection to bring, resiliency and reliability back to that area. The other one is a main segment that we had many multiple breaks on. We hope to reduce the number of emergency main breaks there. We did do some budget-funded water main replacements in the past few years. I've just highlighted a couple of them. One of them was on Marconi Avenue between Bischoff and Elizabeth there. We paved that entire roadway as well, so it's very recognizable as something that recently was done by the City Water Division. And then Holly Hills Avenue between Hampton and January. So we did identify earlier those 3 main replacement projects that hopefully we can fund with the ARPA reallocation money coming in. That's Berkshire and Semple, Keokuk and Alexander, and Weber and Morganford, and then 2 bonus streets at that last one that have had a high number of breaks in the most recent 10 years. This should reduce emergency repair costs in those areas. So we do have long-term needs as well. I mentioned the short-term buckets there. Now we're getting into the long. We did very recently amend and resubmit our state revolving fund application, which was on the books. It's now $65.9 million. We've increased the number of water main replacement projects that we are planning on tackling. We've increased the number of resiliency projects, renewals at the treatment plant. Based on recent emergency costs, trends in chemical costs, we're trying to identify the projects that will get us the most immediate return for that money. We are applying pretty aggressively for grants. We have been awarded a number of grants in the lead replacement and identification field. We have a fluoridation grant to rework one of our chemical storage tanks. We have an energy efficiency and resiliency grant that we applied for to provide some weather-related, climate-related backup power at both the treatment plants and out in the distribution system. We're still waiting to hear back on that one, but it is a $2.3 million project that we submitted. We think we have a strong project there to provide resiliency through some of the more extreme weather events that we're seeing. And then we were awarded a cybersecurity grant, $175,000. There's a little bit of a matching component there, but with the recent events going on in the news, as everyone can surmise, we are closely monitoring risks in that space. The water system is certainly expansive and has some controls, some safeguards in there. This would bolster some of the existing processes that we have to be able to react and prevent those issues from occurring. We are also looking at the one-time funding buckets that are out there. Again, continuing reallocation money that may present in ARPA, RAMS funding to support this aggressive and comprehensive capital improvement plan that we have. And that would help defer some of these rate increases that may occur as part of this renewal, as would bonds. So I mentioned that state application, $65.9 million. We've identified 36 water main replacement projects that we can fund with that state revolving fund loan application. our desire is to maximize, subsidization grants that can come out of that too for disadvantaged community-related investments. We do have 13 of these projects in identified disadvantaged communities in the city of St. Louis. We would push for grant funding for, some of this work. That $20 million estimated cost for these projects would be spread out over 3 or 4 years in a loan that we would get from the state that would have a very low interest, would be subsidized. It would replace 11 miles of water main. It would start building capacity for meaningful and aggressive renewal of water mains in the city of St. Louis. Again, mentioned that that's less than 10% of the system that even shows up on our risk matrix to identify for projects. And so as time goes on, you may have new main segments that would show up in that. So it's an ongoing effort to try to ramp into replacements and then continue that work, in perpetuity to make sure that we're addressing issues. Sometimes it can actually come back down too. So if we end up getting a meaningful amount of replacement done in 20 years, then we can actually maybe consider, reducing the number of replacements that we're doing at that time based on the number of breaks that we're seeing. By year 7 within our 10-year plan, we're hopeful to spending $15 million a year in water main replacements, as part of an ongoing CIP. That total number right now for 10 years looks like $110 million, but again, we're early in the process. This is just a number that we've identified currently. The Water Master Plan will identify the full project list that we'll present when that product is ready in summer. So failure is not an option, right? I mean, reliable water service, it's essential for a city. There are costs associated with these failures that we're experiencing right now, hard costs, soft costs, but, we are committed. I think that, the residents deserve this safe, reliable drinking water that's affordable. And so, this is something that we take very seriously. It is our responsibility. We do intend on being good stewards of any dollars coming our way through rates, through a diverse funding stack, through bonds, through loans, through ARPA, through RAMs, to put that money to good use and maintain that reliable service that everyone comes to, need every day. It is our promise to our customers. So safe, reliable, economical water for all of St. Louis yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And then we're listening. Again, we want to engage with the community. We want to engage with the elected officials and be collaborative in this process. So that's all I have.
Thank you once again for an informative presentation, and really appreciate the work of the Water Division and its staff that we know have been working hard. I just on a personal note want to also, wasn't mentioned in these slides, but the 15,500 fire hydrants that you also maintain. We had a fire during those weeks in January when the weather was freezing, and there was an apartment building that went up, and I think we would have absolutely lost more had the hydrants not been working and then be able to get the water on that fire and keep it from spreading to nearby buildings. So I think that's a crucial part of our infrastructure when it comes to not just the taps that people want to have clean water come out of, but when our fire department taps into those hydrants, it's an emergency and it needs to come out and fast. So we really appreciate all the work that's being done to maintain our infrastructure, even as you struggle with resources. I think we have very few people here, so I'd like to see if we have anyone from the public.
We have 2 who signed up.
Okay, we'd love to hear from them first.
Did you want to swear them all in at the same time?
I can do that, all too. Yeah. So if you're planning to speak, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and the whole truth? Excellent.
First, we have Mr. James Hinkle of the 4th Ward.
Hi, my name is James Heinkel. I'm a resident and a homeowner here in St. Louis, Missouri. President, members of the board, appreciate this time to get to speak. Initially, can you hear me all right?
Thank you.
Hello? Anybody? Bueller? Anyway, I'm here for two different things. I wasn't actually here per se for the water, but living on Arsenal Avenue, I did have a water main break in front of my house. I have a compliment and a criticism for the water department. The criticism is it started out a small leak and we called it in. You guys came out immediately. I was really happy to see that. You put a plate over the leaking water and it continued to leak for 3 days in sub-zero weather. My car was absolutely encased in ice. I had dug it out from the heavy snow that we got, and it made a perfect bathtub for the water to collect in and encase my car. Now, for the compliment, after the team did come out, he brought his excavator, he had a chisel on the end, and he chiseled the cars out of the ice, and the neighbors helped. It was pretty awesome. I mean, the guys were just super nice, super friendly, and good at what they did. And I want to thank you for that. I appreciate it. I know from looking at the screen, if that was a boat with that many holes in it, I wouldn't want to be sailing on it. And I realize you guys got a lot on your plate. Now, being a retired resident of the city of St. Louis, my second concern is cost. You know, reliable water is important. As you pointed out, safe water is even more important. The quality of our water is very important. I'm concerned with that. As far as the service goes on the street, we never lost water. I was happy with that. The communication was good. I appreciate that. So more than not, I would rate you above more than below. You know, like I said, I know you guys were busy. There were a lot of breaks. So knowing that, I just want to say thanks for you getting it done. And it looks nice. It works well. Everything's great. Now, for my second issue, and I'm not sure this is the right forum for this. I grew up here in St. Louis City. I went to St. Mary Magdalene. I went to St. Mary's High School. I lived here my whole life. My dad played ball here. You know, my brothers and sisters are all raised here. We used to work on the SS Admiral years ago when it was docked down on the riverfront. A lot of people don't even remember the Admiral. And like I said, I saw that it's an infrastructure meeting, so I'm gonna put the Admiral as kind of an infrastructure thing. It's the riverfront. But what I'd like to propose is bringing back the SS Admiral. I know it sounds crazy. And the old Admiral, as great as she was, 374 feet wide, 374 feet long, 90 feet wide, 5 decks, open air, top deck, ballroom, and mezzanine. It also had a first deck, which was for the arcade. My proposal is to basically get a GoFundMe page. I'd like it mostly done by the public. If we have to get a ballot, you know, I'll get the signatures and put it on a ballot. Maybe my alderman can help me with that. He's not here. But anyway, I've already done some of the numbers. We can get the boat built for about $90 million. I think where we're going to run in, yeah, I know it sounds like a lot, but you know what? We're talking 5 stories and a very large boat. It would be beautiful, and I'll tell you what, as far as Ballpark Village, the soccer park, the aquarium, it would revitalize Laclede's Landing. It would just bring it completely back. If we had some of the people, maybe Edward Jones, I know the Taylors from Executive Leasing. My cousin is a partner with Edward D. Jones. I think we could get the funding. I do. And obviously, water is the most important thing here. You know what I mean? You know, survival is a lot more important than recreation. But you know what? A city isn't anything if it doesn't draw tourists into the town. And we got the St. Louis Cardinals. We got the soccer club. I think it's important. And I hope you guys think it's important that we have good recreation here. And I'm talking, listen, I don't want to see it go like the Admiral went, and am I going past the time? Just an extra second. Just an extra second. After 1978, they made it into a casino, which ruined the boat. It was this huge eyesore on the city. It had this big purple conglomerate on the eastbound side of the river, and it ruined the boat. What I propose is bringing the Admiral back like it used to be, scenic river cruises, no gambling, you know. It would be great for teenagers. They could come on there. God knows they need a place to go to, you know. Family time during the day, you know, they had the Calliope up on the top deck. The bottom deck, I used to work there. I was at the arcade. You could put in a Dave & Buster's down there. Buffalo Wild Wings on the fourth deck. A big brass band on the ballroom floor. Just picture it, up and down the river, this big, beautiful, gleaming ship back in St. Louis. St. Louis is a river town, for crying out loud. Our flag is 3 rivers. Anyway, that's my segue. The river is the water, and the water is with the water division here, and that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your testimony. And just FYI, I know the sheet metal workers are actually working on a replica of, yeah, for the 250th Day of America. So it's going to be at the Museum of Transportation. Not the actual Admiral, but it is a nice tribute.
But it's perfectly built to the same specs at 1/20th of the size.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Really cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Sandra Paget, I'm sorry.
You got it. It's Paget. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Browning and members of the committee. Yeah, the Admiral was loads of fun. I had fun going there as a teen until my dad prohibited me from going back there ever again. Anyway, I'm here to talk about water. And I first want to acknowledge and thank both the Water Division and members of the Public Infrastructure and Utility Committee for working with us to put together a draft rate review process. And we're especially excited about the last draft that we saw that Mr. Gould sent us that lays out a procedure for stakeholder and public engagement and the development of a formal rate proposal. We believe that these steps are essential to ensuring transparency and public trust, and that's something that Commissioner Patel started out with, was the emphasis on transparency. We are concerned, though, that we have not received a formal proposal. We know that a rate sufficiency study is being worked on, but we want to be sure that there's not any confusion about the announcement of planning to request a rate increase and actually presenting a real rate increase. Right now, we don't have anything that shows the current rate in effect at the time of the request, the specific proposed rate adjustment, the percentage increase, the estimated revenue that would be generated by the increase, and as we've talked about, a supporting rate sufficiency study. We do believe that without this information, stakeholders and the public can't meaningfully evaluate that proposal. So we're respectfully requesting assurance from this committee that once a formal rate proposal is released, including the rate sufficiency study and full supporting financial documentation, that stakeholders will be given an adequate time to respond. We believe that a minimum of 60 to 120 days is necessary to conduct a thorough review. And we do intend to engage a qualified local expert to analyze this proposal. We talked to people all around the country, and we really decided that someone from this area would be best. But in order for that review to be substantive and constructive, we have to have access to the rate sufficiency study and all underlying financial data. And that level of transparency, we believe, is not optional. It's fundamental to good governance. We do anticipate that our expert may recommend evaluating the issue of bonds as a potential strategy to fund infrastructure needs. So we think that the review of someone, not within the Water Division could be helpful. And we believe that that option would deserve thoughtful consideration alongside any proposed rate increases. So your decision, we believe, will ultimately be strengthened by receiving analysis from more than one source. We think that an independent review builds credibility and public confidence in the outcome. We look forward to continuing to work collaboratively and constructively as we have done. We've really built a great relationship, I believe, with Spencer and Neeraj, and some of those pictures that they showed, I identified at meetings or other areas that we had invited them to come to. And our goal is not to delay the process, but to ensure that any rate adjustment is fully supported, clearly explained, and fair to the community. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And with that, we will go ahead and go to committee questions. So I will start with Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming and giving that presentation. Every single time I hear from you, it reaffirms the commitment that I have to the Water Division and this incredible resource. We have to do whatever we can to protect it for now and for future generations, as you mentioned. So thank you for always giving us so much detail in the presentations and really telling it like it is. That's just crucial for our residents to understand the situation of their asset, which I always feel it's important to speak on, because it isn't a utility that is privately owned. This is a utility that the people of the city of St. Louis own. And so when we invest in that, we're investing in ourselves and our future. So I always think it's important to say that. The state revolving loan, that is such an important piece of this. And that revolving part of it is that hopefully if the loan comes in, it can continue to come back and continue to be paid for. Can you talk a little bit more about how that loan works and just the likelihood of receiving that over $65 million that you mentioned?
Sure. So the revolving fund loans have been around since the 90s. They are a product of the Safe Drinking Water Act and, the commitment to improving water quality, reliability, access, protecting source water in the United States by the federal government. What it is a commitment by the federal government to appropriate money annually to the states for the purpose of water infrastructure renewal with a reliable funding source that is accessible to public water. So, in the absence of products that were financial, loan products, that were conducive to this need, there was a lot of gap in funding. And so when these came around, it provided a reliable funding source. Through various years and laws, the funding is increased or drawn back down. The bipartisan infrastructure law allocated quite a bit of funding to the SRFs. That added new allotments that were infrastructure law related, that added to the existing general allotments that were coming through. So, for example, the state of Missouri tends to get anywhere from 1.5% to a little over 2% of that funding federally, nationally. And in those infrastructure law years, we were getting into the state a combined allotment of over $100 million at times. This is significant money to reinvest into the water systems. In the state of Missouri, it's a subsidized product. So that loan commitment, the week before you close on that loan, the market rate that is out there, 30% of that rate is the rate that you lock in at. The state buys those bonds in a direct purchase agreement to back that revolving nature of that product. And so the interest rate is subsidized. The state directly buys the bonds from the city. We sell them, and then the money is available for those capital projects that are identified in that application. So when we applied previously, in 2013, we had a little over $9 million loan that we applied for that was able to get 14 projects completed, main replacement projects, pump replacement projects. The amount of stretch that those dollars, put out there was pretty significant compared to now. So, we knew we needed to do more investment. We tried to actually go after more of that product, but we ran into the rate issue. Our rates were not sufficient to pay that level of debt back. Even that loan was under $10 million. Now that we're seeking $65 million, and these are 20-year terms, with that interest rate, and there's a little bit of a processing fee, a finance fee there, but you'd probably be looking at $3 or $4 million annual debt service from this loan. If we follow that up with another loan application, 3 or 4 years down the line to continue the work, that would add to that debt service. As one loan rolls off, you still have more loans coming in, and so you're building debt slowly, but needing to set rates adequate to pay that debt down slowly over time rather than all up at once.
I think that's a really important point for how increasing rates can help with borrowing more money to keep rates lower for the long term, which is important. You talked about the state revolving loan fund being bonds, but there's also the possibility of issuing other bonds from the Water Division. Do you anticipate that both of those things will be part of the rate sufficiency study that we get information on?
Yes, so we're looking at a diverse funding stack again, even in the rate sufficiency study. We're evaluating multiple products, that are available, including using our budget funds to supplement some of the smaller projects that we've been doing ongoing, but also cash financing some stuff, doing traditional bonds, on the open market. There's other products that are out there as well, but we're evaluating them all. The Water Infrastructure, Innovation Finance Act, WIFIA, is another product that we looked at. Some of those products come and go as far as the funding cycles, through Congress, the appropriations that are let on that. As the bipartisan infrastructure law funding actually goes into its final year in this 2026 allotment, we'll go back to probably the pre-infrastructure law level allotments of funding into the SRF. And so right now, I think there is money available there, but it is the state, Department of Natural Resources and their Financial Assistance Center that maintains that. They update that intended use plan annually as these applications come in. And so when we amended our project application up, they're evaluating that, and that'll either make the full cut or they'll let us know that there isn't that much funding available.
Got it. I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to seeing the capital improvement plan and all of this laid out in a timeline. I think that's really important for us to understand and know how we're moving towards solving this. As you've mentioned before, over $700 million of capital needs. I think that's really important. Just a few more questions. You mentioned, excess capacity of the Water Division a number of times, and I know there are some sales of water to other places, and that a cost of service study is forthcoming with how the city does sell its water, and who it sells it to, and the difference of rates. Do you have the excess capacity of the Water Division quantified?
So we have the design capacity of the treatment plants. Over the years, some of those assets that, have been, falling into a little bit of a deferred maintenance role, they are taken out of service. And so it is degraded somewhat. Mm-hmm. But the Howard Bend treatment plant has produced, I think 86 million gallons in the summer as a peak, for example. And then the Chain of Rocks plant has produced in excess of 120 million gallons in the summer as a peak. So, there is more capacity with the system. Average daily consumption in the system is about 125 million gallons a day.
Okay. With the rate review timeline that you had on the screen, I know Ms. Padgett from the Consumers Council said 60 to 120 days of having that information and being able to review it. Is that 60-day period? It seems like the March to May timeline gives us that 60 days of having a draft proposal and getting to an actual, bill in front of the Board of Aldermen, which actually would put it into, the possibility of being put forward. So do you have any comment on that
Sure.
timeline?
No, I do think that, that shorter end of that, does seem like something, especially with the timing of the study anticipated coming out. And then, when the legislative session opens back up. But one of the things is, the situation is dynamic. We are looking at it, weekly. We're looking at it monthly. We're looking at it daily at times. As cash receipts come in and as expenses go out, as emergencies occur, we can't forecast or anticipate the next emergency. And so if there is something that changes in that time frame, I think that we need to be ready to react to that in real time. So no guarantees, but yeah, I do think that 60-day time window would allow for, the study's completion, a recommendation out of the study, a review of that by the Water Division, a presentation of that, to this body potentially, sharing that out to be transparent on our website, on our water rate review page, and then coming up with that draft proposal based on that, to inform the next steps.
And I think the goal that I have, and I think you share, is that for this not to be something that is unpredictable. We want to be in a situation where the Water Division rates are, consistent and people can predict how much they're going to increase based on a capital improvement plan and less emergencies. I think that's what we all want to see. So I know this is something where we got ourselves in the situation because rates didn't increase for
13 years.
13 years, which doesn't really make sense. It's in one way it's great for the consumer because their rates don't go up for 13 years. In another way, it's not great for the consumer because when they do go up, they have to go up commensurate with how much they would have increased had there been predictable rate increases in a more consistent manner, which is just something that we really need to be thoughtful of, again, especially because this is our utility. This is like if you don't do any maintenance on your car for 13 years and you still expect it to work, it's just not going to happen. So I really appreciate you coming here and being so transparent about all of this. And I think that it's incumbent upon us to keep listening and keep advocating for you as much as we can. So thank you for your time today.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course.
I believe that Alderwoman Cox Antwi had to jump off the call, so, but Alderman Devoti.
Commissioner, first, thank you for coming here today. I feel like every time I listen to you and participate in one of these conversations, I learn more. So thank you. I also want to thank you for your work and your crew's work, the division's work over our late January, early February storm. You and I spoke throughout, and I'm sure you spoke with a lot of people. I know you mentioned that the response wasn't as fast as you would like it to be. I think we can all agree under the circumstances that your crews did an admirable job, so thank you. We have recently been talking about two issues in the Fifth Ward that I think are probably pretty common across the city, and that is dealing with the aftermath of those emergent repairs. The idea being that your crews did work in late January, early February, and now we need to fix or repair the roadway, or we need to repair the sidewalk. Part of the right-of-way access was needed to do the work. We have talked quite a bit about it, but for those who are watching or who may watch this down the line, can you walk the public through the process of what the division is doing in the weeks, months maybe after that storm to then pick up and clean up the work that was necessary?
Sure. No, I appreciate the communication that we've been having ongoing. Constituent issues, resident issues are important to us. And, when there's an issue for a resident, it's an issue for me. So I do appreciate that ongoing conversation. Part of the challenge in the restoration, through the winter main breaks is the weather. Pouring concrete, laying asphalt, finishing that to be a reliable, long-term product, that can withstand road traffic, especially in some of the arterials and, more main thoroughfares in the city, require conditions. And those conditions, ideal conditions above 50 degrees for multiple days. And we're not talking about the high temperature. Unfortunately, we're talking about the low temperature. There are things you can do to counter some of that, but that is the challenge. When this is occurring at high volume as well, it's a little bit of a challenge because our crews are still dealing with the main breaks, and so they have to kind of table some of the restoration. One thing that we've done is, obviously built up contractor capacity, and so we do have contractors that can come in, but at some point when the weather does start to cooperate, every construction company out there, every contractor out there, everyone is waiting for concrete, everyone is waiting for asphalt, and so we do have to fall in line there as well. We see challenges in getting those materials ordered and out to the sites, but we do try to make focus on that because there is an impact to motorists, to other users of the roadway and cyclists, pedestrians that are walking those sidewalks like you mentioned. Main is under there. So, but that is a little bit of the delay that has occurred as a result of this storm, is that extreme cold weather, but also the lingering low temperatures that have been occurring. So we can temporarily rock, those excavations to grade and then come back when the weather's cooperating to, do a permanent restoration there, use other kinds of techniques like that.
And I think it would be fair to say, as we talked with the public, that there has been tracking of where the right-of-way was taken up, where the mains were accessed, and that those projects will be completed when we have the crews and the materials to get the job done. Is that fair?
Absolutely. That is, always something that we're, we have that, it's tracked in a list, and when the weather cooperates, we get out there as we can to restore as many as we can. And you'll see a lot more of that work going on as the weather.
I've taken terrific interest in the rate sufficiency study, and we've had some very good conversations about that in the past, and I look forward to receiving the results of the study later this month. You have mentioned, I think on several occasions, that we know rates are insufficient. I think that infers that we are looking at an increase in rates. The question will be to what amount and how that process works. One of the things that strikes me is how we pay our bills in the city, how we pay our water bill, more specifically. And that is we pay it on a quarterly basis. For those on a fixed income, I hear quite a bit, Matt, paying that bill on a quarterly basis when it is over $100, 120, 140, whatever it might be, can be very, very difficult. Has there been any consideration in changing how we bill? In other words, instead of billing on a quarterly basis, bill on a monthly basis or some other parameter?
I appreciate that question. I do think that is something that, makes sense for us. There have been some conversations with the collector of revenue, who of course, has that role and responsibility to collect on bills that are sent out for revenues for the city of St. Louis. I think there's multiple platforms that are being expanded and used, such as Pay at St. Louis. We can take payments more regularly for customers, residents who prefer to do that. But I think what you're talking about is something that is an ongoing conversation about, a change in that approach rather than just an option. I do think that is something that is ongoing, and we will take up certainly with that feedback and question. We hear it a lot. I think it does warrant additional look into that.
I hear it a lot, and And I understand that there's probably an administrative cost on billing on a monthly versus quarterly basis. But I think for those of us who live in the city who might be on a restricted income, paying on a monthly basis versus seeing that quarterly bill might be worth considering, or at least providing the option for what that's worth. One of the things, I had a town hall in mid-January in the Fifth Ward, and we had a discussion. It wasn't on my radar until one of these meetings, but we had a discussion about the condition of the water department. And one of the items that was brought up was the amount that accounts are in arrears. You mentioned today the notion of, or referenced again today, that the moratorium on collection was lifted this past September of 2025. From a contextual standpoint, can you remind us where we stood in arrears as of the lifting of the moratorium?
Sure. I think, I don't have exact numbers on the top of my head, but if I recall, it was somewhere around 13 owed then, and somewhere, in excess of 10,000 customers.
And so you've talked about the letters that have gone out. What progress have we made since September in narrowing that mark from $13+ million?
Sure. I'd like to say there's been more progress than there's been, but we always knew that, 5 years of moratorium and then just announcing that it was being lifted, it's certainly not going to, end that problem from existing. It was going to take years. And so as we've built, that plan, built the pathways back to solvency, for accounts and account holders that are in arrears, with the generous repayment plans, but also built in the mechanisms and capacity to do disconnects in the system for, some of the more challenging balances, residents and customers that are not contacting us, some of the commercial accounts. I do, think that the number is higher now, not lower. So it is, we anticipate that at some time it will peak and then start to come back under control. This step that I've mentioned today with the final disconnection notice letters, is just another step along that path. We're having these conversations internally as to the effectiveness of our strategies, what the next steps are, but we do know that we need to continue utilizing that process and building that capacity. We use some of our folks who do the water meter reading to do the shutting, and we do have a little bit of vacancy in that group, but also, we've built out process in that group, and we are now ramping into additional disconnection with the letters that we've sent out as well. We hope, again, to have customers contact us first so we can work with them to get into a payment plan, but that will be ongoing as far as shutting water off for those residents that are behind on their bills, that are not contacting us back, that have received a final disconnection notice letter. And again, that number is very high. It's not, it's thousands of account holders.
Is our number of delinquent account holders more or less than it was in September?
More.
Is the amount is the sum amount of delinquent accounts more or less than it was in September?
It is more.
Wow. Okay. So we are sending letters. We're talking about beginning the shutoff process. Are there any other options that have been considered for collection on these delinquent accounts?
So to step back just a second, we have started shutting off months ago,
Yes.
and we're building more capacity to do more shutting by hiring and evaluating other ways to do that. Whether that looks like establishing, some contracts to assist us in doing that work, or, working with the Department of Personnel on maybe a different classification or a new approach in getting that staff built up to do more.
I understand that shutting off water gets somebody's attention, or at least it would get my attention.
Yes.
have we considered court process, legal process?
So we do, again, work through the collector of revenue here. And the collector of revenue is responsible for placing liens on the properties that are behind. And then from there, we don't have a mechanism to do that in the water division, but there is an arc that an account takes when we're not getting action after shutting water off, is what I'll say. And that does run through, credit agencies and collection efforts there. But that is typically after we've shut water off and still don't have contact from the account holder.
So it sounds like as far as the more aggressive means of collection, that would be a better question for the collector. Is that right?
I think that does have to get asked to that entity.
Okay. But when we talk about process, we're talking about a reach out and encouragement, then shutting off water, and then referral for the placement of lien or other legal process.
I would say that the lien process may have already actually occurred. And so that protects, obviously the city and its interest in that debt that is owed in case there is a transfer of the property there.
I think, and this is kind of me banging the desk just a little bit, but as a guy that pays the bills, this is the kind of thing that really irritates me. We have heard a tremendous amount over many months about the quality of our water. I think you are doing an admirable job setting a plan with respect to maintaining the division, maintaining the asset, getting us to the point where we're not acting emergently, but rather we're doing things on a scheduled basis. I think all of that is wonderful. It's absolutely necessary. But man, oh man, I mean, as a guy that pays bills, pretty frustrating to hear that I've got 10,000 fellow residents, well, some of which are businesses and commercial units, that ain't paying the bill. To me, that's craziness. I mean, we talk about being good stewards, and we talk about the responsibility of serving the residents. And I understand part of the responsibility of providing water. But it also seems like part of the responsibility is that if I provide you with a service, that I'm making sure that it's done as efficiently as possible, economically as possible, which means he pays his bill and she pays her bill and you pay my bill. And we're not giving free water away.
Sure. To provide a little comment on that too, it's interesting. We have these conversations with the consultant that's doing the rate sufficiency study. Obviously, the delinquent balance is a factor there. They have talked about how this is not unique to St. Louis. This is across the country. I think that, as infrastructure, investments start to ramp back up, the grade that you see on infrastructure in the water space, by the American Society of Civil Engineers across the country is not good, barely passing, in fact. So all of these systems are dealing with this affordability challenge, and affordability has, multiple definitions, but it is not unique. I think what's, unique here is the length of the moratorium.
Sure.
And so, we are also working collaboratively with two entities, the Water Division and the Collector of Revenue. And so I think we do have to work better together to do this. And we have conversations daily with the Collector of Revenue, on the different programs that are being considered. But yeah, it is a struggle. I will say that the frustration is heard. We get calls and comments from, customers, residents who are paying, who ask those same questions to us, and it is a difficult conversation. So I think we're trying to work through that, and maybe we do need to take a fresh look, a different set of eyes at that.
I think you do. And I think, we listened to Ms. Paget, and I understand her point. But if one of the variables in the next rate is the amount of accounts, well, the amount of the accounts that are delinquent as well as some of those delinquent accounts. I mean, it sounds to me like my water rate may end up going up depending upon how much delinquency is in the remainder of the community. And I think, you know, when we talk about responsibility of serving the residents, part of that responsibility of keeping rates at a reasonable amount should be getting everybody, or as many people as possible, to pay the rate. That's my 2 cents. Before we go, you had also mentioned the utility assistance, which I think, as far as a matter of education goes, I think Mr. Gould mentioned this. Would you, one more opportunity to explain anybody who might be listening today? It's a $500 potential help program, correct?
Correct. It's a direct bill assistance.
Would you tell folks exactly what they need to do to take advantage of that program?
Sure. So we've got a page on our website. You know, if you go to www.sclwater.com, at the top of the page, you'll see a link, a button that says click here to learn more about our customer assistance program. You know, there you'll find the eligibility criteria, the link to the application portal. You know, the income eligibility criteria is expanded, as I mentioned. And so now it's 80% of the area median income. You know, that certainly opens the program up to many delinquent account holders who have a balance, and we're encouraging people to take advantage. You know, this program is set up for people who are struggling to pay their water bill, who have a delinquent balance, to make you know, efforts to contact us, but also get back on track in a repayment plan. It does require that you know, applicants who do receive an award up to $500 one time, you know, enter into a repayment plan agreement. And this is for the water balance that we're talking about. You know, this is not eligible to be used on refuse balance or any other balance that you owe to the city of St. Louis, but the water division. So there are funds available. You know, opening up that eligibility did see an influx of applications coming in. And so, you know, that was the goal, was to help people who were struggling the most to have access to this program. But then at some time, and it was, you know, a few months later, several months later, that we opened up the eligibility to get even more people that assistance, to get them, you know, in a repayment plan with a generous term of 24 months so that they can, you know, pay down their current and past balance at the end of that repayment plan. You know, they would be back to zero balance owed with us.
And if anybody has a question about eligibility, it is as simple as going on the website and investigating whether they fit within the program, right?
Absolutely. Or, you know, we do have a customer service phone number, 314-771-2255. They can contact us and learn about the program there. They can come to the Water Division's admin office, the pay window there at 1640 South Kings Highway Boulevard. We do have flyers there with the QR code, with the eligibility criteria. They can talk to someone about the program. They can receive an application there and actually submit it if they want to on paper. You know, the goal is to expand, you know, certainly education of this program, that it is for anyone who is struggling to pay their water, has a delinquent water balance on their account. You know, we encourage anyone to take a look at this program and apply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, ending on the financial assistance program is great because that's kind of where I wanted to go. So the way it works, as you just described, people have to apply first and then be approved. They have to determine eligibility, then be approved, and then that money is granted to them. But really what that means is it's granted to you, the Water Division, to help pay some of those arrears.
Absolutely. It's you know, it's helping residents who have fallen behind, but it's helping the Water Division in our financial solvency as well, coming out of the pandemic, coming out of the moratorium that was in place. You know, it really is a fantastic program that, can help this large number of people who are behind. And we do feel like at this point, very many people are eligible. We encourage them to apply. And we're trying to spread the word through any and all channels that we have, our socials, the website, the media, certainly elected officials. The mayor has talked about it in her press conferences from time to time. So it is a fantastic program, and we encourage people to take a look at that.
And how much money was budgeted to fund that program?
It was $1 million.
And how much money is left?
I do not know off the top of my head. I want to say it's somewhere around $500,000 to $600,000 that's left.
And this was funded through the American Rescue Plan Act.
Correct.
So there's a deadline on it
There is a deadline on it.
at the end of this year.
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, why is the program set up like that when, and I guess one more question. How much is delinquent?
There's over, let's say $14 million owed.
So $14 million owed, $1 million in financial assistance if people apply. Is there a way that we could set this money up so that the water division could go ahead and apply the remaining balance to its needs, and then when people apply, they can be credited? Because I'm worried that we're not going to be able to work through that remaining money before the before the deadline. And two, I wouldn't be super happy if someone owed me money and then someone else came along and said, well, they can pay you back, but first they have to apply, and that takes action from them, and then you can get your money. I think that the water division at the end of the day is owed this money. I mean, $14 million is income that was, people use that water, whether it was running and they were running the taps, but they were signed up to receive that water and the tap was open, and so they were using that water, and then it wasn't paid for. But you combine that with all the other needs of the water division. It strikes me that if we've got money on the table, it would be better for you all to be able to use it before we lose it.
Absolutely. We're taking a look at, the drawdown of that fund and that program. We're working with the city councilor's office. We're evaluating, potential changes that may be needed to the program. Obviously, we expanded eligibility criteria once already here. I think that as we go do shuts, and as we have customers who are having real challenges in paying their bills, we are hanging not only tags notifying customers that, hey, their account is eligible for shut, and we may come back in 10 days to do that shut if they don't contact us, but we're hanging a trifold of that program brochure that, hey, this help and assistance is available. When we go out to do the tagging, or now with our final disconnection notices, we'll really just go out to do shutting, to again ramp our capabilities, to focus on that part. And customers do come in to the pay window or contact us. We let them know about that program. And so, that money is available to assist customers who are behind on their bills and putting a significant dent in that balance owed, and then get into that repayment plan. So, we are taking a look at that. Of course, it is a concern of ours as well. But, we think we'll be able to get that funding out, applied to the account holders whose balances are delinquent and back into, good use for us to spend on capital renewal. And so I do think that, I completely understand the concern there. We're taking a look at it.
That's good to hear. I think that when you have, I think you showed that the estimated deficit at this point is about negative 9.97. Let's just call it 10.
Yeah.
$10 million, which is up from the 8 or so that we had heard last time we met. And it strikes me that money spent now is money saved later, and that we talked about how the low water rates for the failure to raise the rate for 13 years was a good deal for customers, but I would argue it was not a good deal, because when we are spending money in an emergency and spending more money because it's an emergency, we are not efficiently spending taxpayer money, and that is a disservice to the taxpayer, as well as helps build that distrust in government that we are struggling with right now. I want local government to be the government that people can trust, because we are the most accessible to them. We are the people that they can call directly. People can come into our offices and talk to us, and we are out in their community meetings the way that other levels of government just aren't. And so I think it's important that we also spend their money efficiently and effectively, so that we can prove to them that we're doing everything we can. I do think the Water Division is doing a great job with the money that we get to it. It feels like we're giving you table scraps, though, and that's on us. When you say deferred maintenance, I always think deferred maintenance is a nice term for neglect, but not your neglect. I mean, it's similar to what we heard from the public today, which is, yeah, you were out there immediately and you're fixing the problem. And that's what I always hear from people. If there's a break or anything, the Water Division was on site quickly. And then, the repair can take some time, but you see the people out there working on the problem, and that actually builds trust, because you see that they recognize the problem and are addressing it in a timely way. But there is a undermining when I think city leadership neglects the Water Division. And 13 years without a rate increase is the city leadership neglecting the Water Division, as it is currently city leadership that is failing to recognize the deficit that we're currently projected for. So is there a need to get the Water Division more money before the end of this fiscal than the ARPA bills that are on the table right now? Because I think we've got 5.5 million and 1.2 million. That does not equal 10.
Correct. So, built into that projection at the end of the fiscal year is some reserve in, operating costs. Built into that is also obligations that we have, some of which, may be able to be taken a look at and cleaned up. POs that were issued, work that doesn't necessarily need to happen anymore. Oftentimes we'll have planned work, but then decide a different route, and then that PO is there as an obligation. And then also this effort to collect on the past due balance that's owed. I mentioned that, that number is growing, but it's growing slower. We are ramping our efforts to collect on that delinquent balance that is owed. We are not forgiving any of that debt. Anything that we need to continue operations, will need to be supported by rates. Rates do need to be reviewed and set on a regular recurring basis. As you mentioned, that 13 years, it equated to less than 3%, if you extrapolate that out over the time, the increases that were passed. I don't know for sure, but inflation certainly was a huge challenge. COVID was a huge challenge, supply chain, chemical costs, labor costs. And so, did that rate increase effectively get us to a place where we could build the reserve back? It did not. Hindsight shows us that, right? And so looking ahead, if you're not able to counteract the effects of inflationary pressures, rising expenses in operation, costs that we're seeing with contractors because of vacancy concerns and issues in staffing and labor markets, then you're certainly putting a stress and a strain on the necessary level of capital renewal that we need to be doing. And so I think that's the thing that we need to think about, is that, if a rate increase is recommended and passed, that money will be necessary, but more will be necessary after it, and after it, and after it in an ongoing fashion, but more regular, more transparent, more informed. The master plan, development of projects that have high return on investment. So I do understand the concern about that delinquent balance that's owed. It is not going to be forgiven. We are going to continue working that problem down, as well as every other problem that, we certainly perceive and have high on our list. But the rates do need to support the operation. The rates do need to support the expenses in capital renewal ongoing. I don't think that any rate increase, should be looked at in a vacuum aside from that money that's owed, because we are going after that as well. We have a lot of things that are happening in parallel, a lot of parallel processes, improvements in staffing, in our data-driven approach. That again, I'm very excited by the work in the master plan to identify these low-hanging fruit projects, and also the positives in that, to say that 90% of the pipe segments, may not be a risk at all right now. So all of these things happening, all of the dollars that come in from the various forms that they're coming in, we're evaluating that. I do think that your concern about the end of this fiscal year is certainly a concern of mine. That's what I mentioned, that our fiscal team is looking at this regularly. And we intend on coming to this forum and letting the elected officials know, certainly working with the administration as well. We're in close communication with them about our financial situation. The moment something changes, positive or negative, we're trying to spread that word.
And I appreciate that. I think the communication has been great. I think it's been, great and improving at the same time. And so that's something that we want to continue to see, because that communication between, the Water Division and the Mayor's Office, the Water Division and the Board of Aldermen, at the end of the day, it's those two entities that are going to be able to get more money for the Water Division. The thing that's been challenging to get people to understand is that it is not just insufficient rates. It's insufficient rates with rising costs. It's insufficient rates with delinquent accounts. It's insufficient rates with aging infrastructure. And so when you have those multiple problems, as you've described it, a diverse funding stack is necessary. Both money now in the form of a capital infusion into the department, as well as money later, which would be the rates. Because if your spouse comes home and says, "Hey, I got a raise," you're like, "That's great, but there's a hole in the roof right now that we need to fix, and the raise is going to make us enough money over the next 10 years to fix that hole, but we need to fix it right now because it's water's coming in." So I've been in this situation in my own home, so I know what it takes to. And at the time you take out a loan, but even we've heard can't take out loans because the rates aren't high enough. So that's why I think we have this opportunity right now to get the Water Division on a financially stable footing, to be able to address these problems not only as they come up, but also proactively address it. Because I think the proactive maintenance is what our residents would like to see. I'd much rather see the Water Division out working on something before the pipe breaks than have a sheet of ice encase my car. I think that's it's not on you when you've had insufficient resources, but it is going to be on us to make sure you have the resources going forward to be able to be that department that prevents problems before they escalate. So I don't have any more questions. I really appreciate the time you've taken. I really also want to shout out, I love the pictures that you've included of the staff, because those are the people out there doing the work. Whenever there's a break in my ward, I always try to come by and talk to the people doing the work, because that is the hard job. When it's sub-zero temperatures outside and people are responding and working in those conditions just so that you can get your water back on, that's public service. And that's what we really appreciate our workers for doing, because they know that they would do the same if it was on their block. They're doing it for our residents, and we just, I know I appreciate them so much. So please pass along our appreciation to your staff. And is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close today?
No. Thank you very much for having me here. I think it's really important that we have regular communication. I appreciate all the questions. I think, I learned something when I come here about, what constituents are bringing to you all. So it's very important to me that we have these conversations openly, and then, of course, the transparency is just paramount to me. We're all in this together. We have to convey this message to you all, to the community. So if you do have community meetings, neighborhood meetings, I know Spencer said, call us, but we have a PIO as well. We love to come out and talk to residents about what it is that we're doing, get that proactive communication out, answer questions, talk one-on-one. It's a great thing for us. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, Madam Clerk, do we have any written testimony today?
No, we have none.
Okay, and does any members have any announcements? Seeing none, I'd like to excuse the Alderwoman from the 10th and the Alderwoman from the 13th for necessary absence. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Previous roll.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 1st, seconded by the Alderman from the 5th. Call for previous roll from the Alderwoman from the 1st. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.